follow our journey over to Frankfurt, Cologne, and Dortmund and elsewhere all week long on our Facebook and our Twitter and our, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, anywhere that stuff goes, we will go as my wife meets the guy who saved her life twice. So we got a big week. My wife's going to join us on the program here this week as well as on our Facebook Live. One of my favorite guests is now on the line, and I want to get to him because so many things we could discuss and around football and baseball and business and sports. He is Maury Brown. He is Bizball Maury. If you've listened for any period of time, you know he and I like to go back and forth on rock and roll. And, a lot of things we discuss tend to be ethical or integrity-based or business-based. But this Colin Kaepernick thing, it didn't take but a couple of hours, and you came out with a column at Forbes right away on it. And it really is one of those sort of polarizing things when someone does something this unique, this sort of anti-societal or anti-patriotic that really sort of gets the fires going on the weekend news cycle. Right, Maury?
Well, it did. I mean, and Nestor, it's one of those things where, there are articles that are easy to write, and there are some that just make you really uncomfortable. And this is one of them, and I think that that's part of what Kaepernick is up to here. I mean, this is not something that is, I think, an easy topic to broach.
And this isn't good for his career, let's be honest, man. Most people don't touch this because this is how you get a one-way ticket out of town and you get blackballed, literally. No one will sign you. You're Ray Rice when you do this sort of stuff.
Well, and there's that. I mean, there's some people saying that it's all fabricated. And, for those that haven't followed the story, he's decided that he's not going to stand for the national anthem based upon how race relations are really in this country right now. He doesn't feel that the country has really represented him and others of people of color. So it reminded me of a few things. So I'm trying to stand back from it and go, all right, let's just talk about athletes that are making social stands around certain topics. And I thought of Ali deciding not to go and making a conscious decision to not serve in Vietnam over his religious beliefs. I was reminded of Smith and Carlos, who did the Black Power fist pump at the '68 Olympics. And then I'm thinking of Kaepernick here, right? And there are differences in this thing. Ali's situation was, I'm not going to go do this, and I'm making a statement based upon a decision that my country made, right? The country was clearly at war. And he said, I don't agree with this. They've never done anything wrong to me. Why should I go over there? I've got more problems here. The situation with the Black Power salute was something that I think, was more along the lines of what we've got going on with Kaepernick. You can sit there and say, while you're in the midst of doing the national anthem, that you could do something like that would be seen as disrespectful. But this
isn't the first time this has happened with the national anthem. I mean, the NBA had to deal with this 20 years ago with Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, right? I mean, I remember I was on the radio 20 years ago when that happened, and people freaked out, right?
They do. And, I mean, so that's really the question. So you're going to remember that, and we're going to remember some of these other things. The question becomes, did he use the right method here? Did he use the right thing in basically disrespecting the flag, which is what a lot of people are saying, and that you shouldn't really do that at all, that there are people that died to allow you to have the freedoms that you have. And then there's the idea that we really have an unbalanced system here with the whole, white privilege, the fact that there's profiling, that there's been a number, the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and there's some real discussion around race right now that is very prevalent, and I think that is legitimate.
Well, it's only a matter of time. Look, you and I are rock and roll guys, right? I mean, there's a whole wing in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame about protest and anarchy and, and God and Elvis and, the Beatles and all that stuff. But on the sports side, there's so much money in it, right, that, Colin Kaepernick's going to make $150 million being an athlete. Most of the guys in that category, in that privilege, in that tax bracket really are pretty self-indulged, right? Like they can stand up and say this country's screwed up and I'm black and I'm mistreated, or I'm Latin as I am and I'm mistreated by the Orioles, which I am, and blame it on whatever they want. But, it is rare, right? I mean, this is a rare stance amongst athletes, but I'm shocked that that it doesn't happen more often, quite frankly, given how many athletes are of a distinct color that is different than whether it's Asian baseball players, whether it's European basketball, whatever it is. There are more non-white athletes than there are white athletes anywhere outside the NHL, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, you could sit there. I think that the point that you're making here, if I'm reading this right, Nestor, is that I mentioned this in the story that right now athletes are pretty much milquetoast. You saw more of it in the '60s and the '70s. Certainly Jackie Robinson being another one that was willing to make social commentary around it. But there is this concern now that it's like it's going to ding me in the wallet. And
Sure.
and I think that Kaepernick's in this situation. There are people that are saying, I could not believe this. He's doing this because he's on the outs and he has to fabricate this thing. It's all fabricated. I don't care how much money you make. It doesn't cover up. You have an inability, no matter how much money you have, to where there is absolutely a situation where you're going to potentially be treated differently due to the color of your skin. Now, granted, we've had situations like certainly O.J. Simpson and others, but for the most part, if anybody watched that 30 for 30 on O.J., it was the background of race relations specifically with the police and how that all fed into the O.J. trial and whatnot. So, it's just part of me sits there and goes, I feel really uncomfortable about this idea of using the flag in the national anthem. I mean, it is just one of those things to where I personally am a very patriotic person. I want to thank as many people, men and women, that serve this country, and I have friends and relatives that have. So one part of me sits there and goes, this really bothers me that that's going on. On the other hand, I sit there and go, well, an athlete is using their platform and they're trying to do something good out of it or at least cause a discussion. And here we are. We're having that discussion. Now, if you go online
and it's an uncomfortable one, as you pointed out.
It's highly uncomfortable. Now, you and I are having a civil discussion about this, but if you go on social media, and it's social media, so we probably shouldn't, but it's really, really fractious and polarized. I mean, it is really, this guy's a POS, and he shouldn't be doing this kind of thing, and, blah, blah, blah. And there are others who are like, how can you say that? You're not black. You don't understand. You're not in the position that the people in the black community and those of color are. So you have this thing going on right now, and I say I don't know if it's quite right. I say that this is this generation's 1968 right now, between what's going on in the race for politics and what is going on around us altogether in terms of the fractious nature of the country, that we're in this position right now. So I don't know.
Well, and athletes feel themselves in a leadership role. I mean, they have a Twitter the same as Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have, right? And they make their stance. Now, that being said, they are gainfully employed for lots of money by far more wealthy, much more powerful individuals who could see this as part of the circus they don't want coming to their town for a guy who's a backup quarterback, which I find it to be even more sort of a statement that he would choose here and now to sort of make this sort of statement, because it is very unique, but I am shocked it doesn't happen more often. I really am.
Well, I think that it's for all the reasons that you mentioned. I mean, when you're thinking about your meal ticket, if you're thinking about the money and taking care of your family, if you're thinking about endorsements,
which is what all they've been told to think about since they were 15, right? Literally.
Exactly. But you do mention this. I mean, that's why I was so blown away by that commentary. Oh, he's doing this thing right now because he's a backup quarterback. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. If there was ever a guy to stick his, hands in his pocket and zip his mouth on a topic, it would be a Colin Kaepernick at this point in their career. Here he is going out and making a real statement right now in a position to where he could easily be cut at some point. And the NFL has there's nothing that says you absolutely have to stand up for this thing, but they of course encourage it. And then there's the unwritten part of this. You don't think that he isn't going to get a lot of pressure from his fellow teammates, from other players in the league, and certainly from those that he reports to and who he works for. I think you've got another thing coming to think that that's not going to happen. But it's just really difficult. I get back to this thing. I could never go to those lengths. I'm not black. I'm not in that position. I would never do that. Now, whether I would use the flag as this method of doing this, To me, it's different than Ali. Like I said prior, Ali, the country was at war. The country made a decision to go and do this thing, and you're against that. You can make a case that this situation with Kaepernick is different, and in that there are individuals. The country itself is not saying go out there right now and put people of color at a disadvantage from those that are white. It just happens to be that way in particular circles right now, and in certain communities more than others. And we've got a problem with it, and we're trying to deal with it. And if you, of course, went to the president, and certainly you would think those that are running for office would say, yeah, we've got this problem. All lives matter on one end, but when you talk about that, what we're saying is that there's some that have an advantage, what white privilege is. And I'm not going to say, there is no way in this world that I can't say, me being white, that I don't have white privilege. So I can never say I understand what a black person is going through. I can empathize, and I can try and understand it, but there's no way that me, any more than a black person, can try and understand what I go through with white privilege. So it's, like I said, it's difficult. There are people that are going, Maureen, just shut up right now. This is just ridiculous. Don't even make that. But it's an honest-to-goodness topic of discussion going on right now. I just don't know, potentially, if he's using the right method of it, that it might get lost. 20 years from now, if we're still talking about it, much like we're talking like we did with Ali, or like we're talking with Smith and Carlos at the 68 Olympics, we're still talking about that now. It'll be interesting to see whether this continues to play out and whether it'll have the longevity of those two issues.
Yeah, I mean, as a pundit, I am, 25 years into doing radio now, Maury. I don't know if you've noticed or not. I'm past outrage, right? Like, I'm not the guy that's going to give the hot take on Twitter of outrage on every outrageous thing that happens. I mean, I had a baseball owner play a baseball game here last year and tell everybody in the city to not come. I was outraged by that. I thought, well, why would you play the game if there's nobody there? No one here was outraged because he said it was okay and they had to get the game in, and I didn't understand that either, being a person that lives here in the community, the teams for the community. But, I don't take outrage positions on much of this, and I'm not really outraged by Kaepernick, but I find that the debate to be fascinating based on the flag, based on veteranship, based on color of your skin, based on political strain. And I said this earlier, whether you're Donald Trump and you're saying something I don't believe in that's completely outrageous out on Twitter, or whether you're sitting for the national anthem in a 49er jersey and they're doing business with the government and having flyovers and laying the flag out, either side of it, there's a level of balls that it takes that you can only have in America, right? As Don King used to say and wave his little flag on my show, only in America, Nasty, only in America. Can you do this, right? And I think that that's part of the beauty of America is that, there's always going to be one Donald Trump or one Colin Kaepernick or one Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf who is saying, hey, I'm going to do things. One Dennis Rodman, for crying out loud, who, by the way, wound up on stage with Eddie Vedder last Saturday night at Wrigley Field, I'll have you know. Maury Brown is here. He is Bizball Maury. He's written a great piece on Kaepernick's stance on the national anthem, needing to create a national debate. We love having Maury on the program. He's based in Portland, Oregon. Maury came into my life through baseball and expansion, and Bizball Maury out on Twitter, and I love following him and love having him on the program. For you with baseball, and the pennant race is so hot here in Baltimore, one of the issues that I think all of sports is a problem, and I know we've talked about this as well, that if Portland would have really gotten the Nationals, how many people would be going to the games there, and what could they afford to spend? And this week we have the Blue Jays coming here, who are now actively, again, drawing 46, 48,000 every night to games there. The Orioles have been relevant for 5 years, and they're really having trouble selling tickets here. They're really having trouble selling tickets in Cleveland, where they have a huge lead. The baseball thing isn't, well, they'll just come back when we start winning. They'll be beating down a path to get back to the stadium. That's happened in Toronto, strangely enough, but it hasn't happened in other places.
Well, it doesn't. And I think it kind of works like this. If you're in a position when you go and you're successful for an extended period of time and you start to tail off, that takes longer. Fans will hang out with that a little bit longer, going, well, they'll probably get it turned around here or there. And it takes longer for reality to set in. But once you start to be on the lower end of things and you start to come around, it normally takes some time to get that back to happening. And the situation of Baltimore is a little bit difficult because it seems to be a bit of a roller coaster. There doesn't seem to be a sustained situation. You're watching a team that in 1 second is on fire and is going to just rip the AL East apart, and then they're in a situation like this, this last series where the Yankees just beat the snot out of them. And it just becomes, one of these things where it's like, I think you get into this an emotional investment. I normally talk about this with the Miami Marlins, but it's really any team that when you make it an emotional investment in something, what you don't want to do is get hurt, right? Whether you're in a relationship with, your significant other or whether it's with sports. I want to love you. I want you to love me back. If what I don't want you to do is hurt me and repeatedly hurt me. And so when you guys get
welcome to my relationship with Peter Angelos and the Orioles. There you go. I have a radio station set up to kiss their ass, to help them sell tickets, to promote their baseball team, but they're not allowed to do one thing, Maury. They're not allowed to lie to me. And that's all they've done for 23 years is lie to the people here. So, and I'm not the only one that has felt that, and I'm not the only one that's not running back there to give them money because they're in second place or whatever,
And that's part of it, I maybe, and, that's certainly, if you want to go back a ways, certainly, there was, how the state of the franchise was when Angelos took over, and then significantly after the run with Ripken and certainly the celebration with Ripken and the playoff drought, or when playoff time basically went into drought time.
It wasn't a playoff drought. It was a complete lack of relevancy. It's not like they were in it a couple of years and just didn't make it. They didn't play a meaningful baseball game from October of 1997 until 2011.
And that's really where it is. It takes time to build that stuff back up. Now, granted, if there are certain markets, and you mentioned Toronto, so you watch where Toronto has been in this situation, and they've been hungry to make this sort of thing happen. And look, they had a heck of a drought there themselves. The difference is they seem to at least been in there in bits and pieces as well. And there is that feeling that, it's Canadian, they have something going on there, and Toronto is a fairly large market, right? So that they have something going on there. And I think that it's a great success story. But it is in any of these. I mean, Cleveland's a great example. If you're old enough, and you are, Nestor, and I am, you'll remember when the Jake was sold out for, game after game after
I have
game
never
after
been
game.
to a more electric place for a baseball game than being in Cleveland in 95, 96, 97 when they lost the Browns or when they were in the process of losing the Browns to us. It was a football game. I mean, and I've been to a lot of World Series baseball games and postseason. I've never seen anything like Cleveland. There was a succinct home field advantage there, for sure.
And so that ability to build it back up. Look, I'll say this. If the Indians go, if they make it to the ALCS, I would say that next year you would see a difference. Now, is it going to be a dramatic difference? Is it going to be on those levels that you mentioned from those halcyon days in the mid to late 90s? Probably not, but it'll certainly be there. And this is the difficulty. It takes time. It is, I not to use this situation, but it is one of those things where if you're in a quote unquote abusive relationship with your sports team where you're just getting hurt over and over and over, it's just difficult to make an emotional investment or a financial investment to go see it because you feel like you're going to get hurt again. If I just love them a little bit more, they'll come back. And that's never the case sometimes. It takes time to do this sort of thing, especially ones that are in these bad lulls. Now, there are some exceptions. I'm surprised. I live here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm always amazed at how popular the Seattle Mariners are, given their futility streak. But they can, if you've been there to that ballpark, it's glorious. It's in a beautiful location. It looks out on downtown. It's very nice. And it's Pacific Northwest, man. I mean, to go and sit in a nice warm spot in the summer, we'd live for that stuff here. So I think it really depends. There's not nearly the angst, there's not nearly the jadedness of a team that has been around much longer like we see in Seattle compared to the Baltimore Orioles. But it is one of those things to where some of these clubs, I think they just take a little bit more time to get them going. If you got 2 winning or 3 or 4 seasons of the Orioles going deep into the playoffs, and heaven forbid making it to the World Series, I'm sure that you would see a significant change in attendance.
Mark, it's been a hell of a week for me, man. I was out in Chicago at Wrigley Field with Pearl Jam for a couple of shows. I mean, incredible Cubs, everything there. I went to the White Sox game on Sunday. They were playing the A's. It was me and 8,000 of my best friends under the Aparicio sign, and I was eating elotes and eating some chorizo and cerveza on the south side. Meanwhile, on the north side, it's red, it's blue, it's pinstriped, it's Joe Madden, it's Harry Carey. It was Eddie Vedder. Boy, they better not lose game one on the north side. I'm telling you.
Well, and that's really. That team is just, well, it's the Cubs, and I get back to this that when you've been waiting this long and you've had a group of individuals that have sat there, it just reminds me so much of the Red Sox in 2004. That's your best dream, right? That you would get that. But the situation with Pearl Jam, Eddie Vedder is the biggest doggone Cubs fan you could meet. And it's always, He
told the story about the first time he ever smelled weed as a kid was on the rooftop out in left field, and he pointed to it from center field. And here's my favorite baseball meets rock and roll story for you. So my friend is a White Sox fan, and she's coming to the Pearl Jam show on Monday night. And, we got our text out. There's no, real sections, right? Like, you're on the field, there's section S and T and E, and how the hell you find anybody? So I text her, and I said, listen, I'm getting a beer over about 10 feet from the Bartman incident. They had a beer truck set up right on the left field line, right against the wall there where the Bartman thing happened. So every fan in the world, if I told you, Maury, meet me at Wrigley Field where the Bartman incident happened, I'll be standing there with a cold beer for you. You would know exactly where to stand, right?
Exactly. and I would think about, a Lou pointing up there and being,
WTF.
Yeah. No, and man, that incident, I watched the 30 for 30 on that one, I think more than any other. That it's for those that have never seen that 30 for 30 on Chasing Bartman, I think it's Chasing Hell on Bartman it's incredible. But yeah, that's the thing. You would go, yeah, where Bartman was at, that would be the easiest one to find.
They should let him lead the parade, I think, if it ever comes to that. Maury, it's always great having you on, man. I've had two with Eddie Vedder, one with Springsteen. I got two more with Springsteen next week. I've seen Billy Joel this summer. It's been a good summer. Your band's doing great out there, right? Playing your AC/DC tunes, right?
Yeah, I'm taking a bit of a break here for a month or so, and then we'll dive back into it. I'm going to go and do some original stuff and get into the studio. So yeah, a little bit of a break right now and having some fun. So it's always a good time. Sounds like you've got a blessed rock and roll life right now. I'm jealous.
It's a good groove I'm in right now. Now if I could just talk Steve Gorman into getting the Black Crows back together, I have no chance of doing that. I've been warned, but he is an Oriole fan, so I at least give him that much love, and he comes on the program. Maury, it's always great having you on, man. At some point, you and I are going to get together over some craft brews and some shoot the thrill music out there in the Pacific Northwest. I promise you.
All right, man. I look forward to that day. You have a good one.
It's on the agenda. He is Bizball Maury, out on Twitter as well as at Forbes, and you can always follow his journey. No one does it better. USA Today's Field of Green, as well as the owner of Bizball.biz and a longtime baseball aficionado, Maury Brown. Bizball, Bizball Maury, one of my all-time favorite guests to have on the program, and I didn't even get to talk any more rock and roll with him, but next time, I promise you, we'll talk rock and roll, Maury. You can find me out on the internet, anywhere the internet is served, like whether it's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. So I said that. Snapchat, Instagram, all those places. We're also going to be over in Germany all week meeting the man who has saved my wife's life twice. We're going to be chronicling that this week. I'll be talking to my wife a little bit on the radio about that as well. If you've chronicled my career or our journey over the last couple of years, it's a pretty special week around here. So we're going to be in Germany. Kolsch will be drinking or drunk. Schnitzel and strudel will be eaten. I don't even know what Spätzle is, but I'm going to eat it. I hear it's a pasta. I'm going to try it, and I think Black Forest cake's going to be involved. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports. Atlantic Ocean this week. We will be out in Germany for the rest of the week. I'll be doing some broadcasting there and probably watching some Orioles and some, our donor knows all about American sports and when these games are actually